What is rape culture? If you haven't heard the term before, rape culture is basically acknowledging that we live in a society that normalizes or diminishes rape through the bombardment of images, language, laws, and social attitudes. It's a culture in which victim blaming is not just present, but common, and caveats like, well, what did she expect going home with him? And, oh, she was drunk, wasn't she? And, well, she slept with him before, and look at that skirt she was wearing, are routinely invoked to excuse perpetrators as having just kind of done what everyone would have expected them to do, done what a red-blooded Aussie male would do. Can't say fairer than that. I mean, she did go home with him. It's that kind of language. It's the language of lawmakers who use words like honest rape and forcible rape and legitimate rape to portray the fact that they believe that there are actually two kinds of rape. There's the very, very, very small incidents of real rape, and then there are all of the overwhelming incidents of rape where women are actually just lying about it because they are so embarrassed by the fact that they've allowed something to enter their shame cave other than the Holy Spirit. So that's rape culture, and I'm just going to talk you through a series of examples now of what I think rape culture looks like, and some of them are local and some of them are international, because, yay, rape culture exists everywhere. We can all share it. So rape culture is Peter Spider-Everett after the 2010 AFL Grand Final, responding to allegations, and it's very important, this word allegedly. You'll speak to people who don't believe that rape culture exists, and you'll speak to people who don't believe that men can ever be charged with rape, because of course women are always lying. Very, very intent on protecting the due process of the legal system, only in cases of sexual assault where they remind you consistently that this just happened allegedly. So, Peter Spider-Everett, responding to the allegations after the 2010 AFL Grand Final that a sexual assault had occurred in the home of one of the Collingwood players. Now that has since been resolved, and if you do have a chance, do read Anna Crean's Night Games, because it's a brilliant exploration of sex, power and culture. But him responding to that with the following tweet. Girls, when will you learn that at 3 a.m. when you go home drunk with a guy that it's not for a cup of Milo, allegedly? It's Kerry-Ann Kennelly responding to that tweet by inviting Peter Spider-Everett onto her show and sympathising with him over the poor fate of footballers who have strays throw themselves at them all the time and get them in trouble. It's Channel 9 responding to the dismay and outrage, and I am grateful that it was given, because not everyone likes to talk out about rape culture. But Channel 9 responding to that outrage by issuing a statement that said, in regards to the segment on Kerry-Ann's show this morning, what she was talking about when she talked about strays was alcohol-fueled situations in which both girls and guys must take the blame. Rape culture is reducing rape to an alcohol-fueled situation. Rape culture is Channel 9 responding to these things with such dismissive tones that it reinforces to people that it's an alcohol-fueled situation and not an actual assault on their bodies. Looking further abroad, rape culture is Daniel Tosh, who's a comedian standing in front of a live audience and responding to a woman who'd taken umbrage at one of his jokes about rape by saying, wouldn't it be funny if like 5 guys just came down and raped this woman right now? Wouldn't that be hilarious? Rape culture is also his comedy mates then defending him, because comedy is sacred and women's bodies aren't. Rape culture is raising boys in an environment and a society that teaches them that they have an entitlement to women's bodies. And that is how things like Steubenville, Ohio happens. That's how things like the Roastbusters in Auckland happens, where boys think that it is so much their right to treat a woman's body as they please, that not only will they do it in front of all of their friends, rape an unconscious woman repeatedly, but they'll film it. They'll actually document the evidence and put it on the internet for everyone to see what a big man they are. In Auckland, it's the police not doing anything about it for years, even though they knew about it, because they said we couldn't do anything about it. Rape culture is reinforcing to young girls that they don't have the right to feel safe. Rape culture is people telling women that protecting themselves from rape is like property theft. That, well, you know, it's not that I believe that rape is okay, but, you know, if you're going to leave your car parked on a street with the keys in the ignition and walk away, can you really expect that someone's not going to come along and steal it? And I say to that the two things that I think when I think, you know, people calling property theft into account for this is that, one, my vagina isn't a car, and if it was, I would have saved a lot more money in taxis over the years, and then I'd be able to fix its brake pads. But secondly, we're not disembodied from our bodies. Our vaginas aren't cars that we can walk away from and leave. The only way that analogy works is if I'm sitting in the car and you come and you open the car and you drag me out of it and you steal my fucking car. Your vagina is not a vehicle. But this is what rape culture looks like. Rape culture is pretending that rape culture doesn't exist. It's people preferring to believe that the women in their lives are potential victims rather than accepting that the men in their lives are potential predators. Because people like to talk about rapists as being evil monsters who lurk in the streets and shadows, and we, the women, have to protect ourselves against them. I'm not saying that rape is good, girls. I'm just saying, can't you just learn to take care of yourselves? Girls, when will you learn that the world is full of evil monsters and you have to protect yourselves? Rape culture is assuming that we haven't been raised protecting ourselves, believing in the state of our own vulnerability since the very days that we were first walking out away from our parents. And on that note, actually, in the evil monsters, rape culture denies the reality of rape, that most of it doesn't happen on the streets. Most of it happens in the home. It's done to us by men we know, men we love, men we may even be related to. That's what rape culture looks like. And so that's a very sort of somber kind of view of the world that we live in, but the world that people don't want to talk about because rape, it's not nice, we don't want to talk about it, it's not nice, it's not nice. It's a hemorrhoid removal operation on the television. I was pretty scared coming here to do this talk today because it's quite daunting standing in front of a room full of people and sharing your ideas on things. Had a couple of nervous poos. Sorry, I forgot that women aren't supposed to shit. See, I'm shaking. We all get nervous. But this is the thing, is that standing here in front of people, in front of an audience, anyone doing that, it's scary and it's a good kind of fear. And I want to be liberated by my fear. I don't want to be imprisoned by it. And this is what I think. You know, Paul mentioned a comment before talking about terrorism. I do think it's an act of terrorism to raise girls to believe that the world is not safe for them. Because what it does is it forces us to diminish ourselves. It means that we take up less space than we are entitled to. We live in a world where women are taught they do not have the right to walk down the street at night because they don't have the access to the same space as men. And I think that that's an act of terrorism. And I will not negotiate with terrorists on those terms. So I do not engage people in conversations about why women need to protect themselves or why our vaginas are like cars. I just don't tolerate it. And this is what we all have to start doing. I have a boyfriend, which I know is kind of crazy because as a, obviously radical separatist lesbian feminist, as a lot of my fans on Daily Life call me, I'm not supposed to have a boyfriend, but, I did fashion him out of gingerbread and bring him to life with a black voodoo magic swirling around in my devil's Datsun. But he exists now, and it still counts. And he often says to me, can we just make it through one dinner where you don't talk about rape? To which I reply, can we just make it through one of Earth's rotations around the sun where I can walk on the street with as much right to safety as you just because you have a penis? And actually, statistically speaking, based on what we know about male-on-male violence, he is less likely to be safe on the streets than me. But that's not the way that we talk about violence and safety. It is convenient for people to make women afraid because it keeps us controlled. I understand that rape makes people uncomfortable. A lot of things make me uncomfortable. For example, I am uncomfortable with the fact that millions of girls and women are raped around the world each year and only a handful of them ever see justice prevail. I'm uncomfortable with the fact that because of the work that I do, I stand in front of an audience like this and I automatically think, which third of this audience has experienced sexual assault or violence or rape? And I'm uncomfortable with the fact that of that proportion of the audience, all of them will have been socialized at some point that you don't talk about these things in polite society. And I'm uncomfortable with the fact that as a white middle-class woman, it's hard for me to talk about rape. But it's even more difficult for a woman of color, a disabled woman, a woman who's a sex worker, a woman who's living in poverty, a woman who doesn't live here. It's harder for those women to talk about something which is already hard for me to discuss. I'm uncomfortable with those facts. I get it. Rape is uncomfortable. But this is why we need to keep talking about it and we need to keep disrupting people's comfortable lives with it. Because the result of that is that they actually do start to change. in all of the time that I've been writing and writing and writing about rape, in all of the emails that I've gotten from, peeling through the ones that say to me that I'm just jealous because no one wants to rape me because I'm too ugly. Because, of course, the only thing worse than being raped is being considered not pretty enough to be raped. Right, Tracy? In all of that, I also get emails from young girls that inspire me, who tell me that the things that I've written and the things that other women like me have written about rape, bringing this conversation into the national dialogue, have let them realize that they're not responsible for what happened to them. It's made them realize that it's not their fault. But even better than that is the emails I get from men who tell me that something about this conversation that we're having now has changed the way that they view the world. It's made them realize how privileged they are. It's made them realize how much entitlement men generally have to space and safety. And it's made them want to change things for the better. I received an email from a friend of mine the other day, or I say friend, but we went to school together. So, we haven't talked really in 20 years, but we're Facebook friends because that's how people catch up these days. And he sent me an email out of nowhere with a link to a meme, and it was just a Venn diagram of this is what causes rape. And it's things like alcohol, clothing, attitudes, rapists. And the rapist was in red, and the whole Venn diagram was in red. Because the only thing common to all experiences of rape is a rapist. That is the only thing that we can say causes rape, is a rapist. And the way that we talk about rape, as if it's some kind of arbitrary thing that just happens to women, that we just walk out of the door one day and just accidentally step in a puddle of it because we weren't paying attention, that's how we remove responsibility from the problem. And I believe that to fix the problem, you have to name the problem. And I was really inspired by that email that he sent me because it showed me that this guy, who I would say is kind of like pretty much your average Australian bloke, he likes sports and he's a pretty good guy, he's kind of like on the middle of the fence politically. He doesn't have to be engaged in these topics because society enables him to not be engaged in them. But he has chosen to become engaged because of the things that he's been reading and because of the things that he's been hearing. And it means that he wants to change the world around him for the better. And I'm really inspired by that. And I think that that's why we need to keep talking about these things, even though it makes people uncomfortable, even though people don't like to think about it, even though they like to pretend that it doesn't exist. Because I would rather people be uncomfortable about rape than be complacent about it. Thank you.